man who joined the search for missing South Australian boy Gus Lamont says he's certain the 4-year-old is not on the family property.
He's someone who knows that land like the back of his hand, and he's told us that he believes that there's absolutely no way that Gus is on that property, which we haven't heard before. He's also put to bed some of the theories that are being out there in terms of a wedge-tailed eagle, dogs, wild pigs. He says none of that sort of animal is on that property.
It's not going to happen. A wedge-tail will pick up a kilo or two. You know, they're not going to pick up a 4-year-old. There's no pigs, there's no wild dogs, there's no foxes.
So we have just got an update from South Australian Police who say they were there yesterday, actually. They were following up on a lead that a footprint was found about 3.5 kilometres from the homestead near Yunta where he went missing. They thought it might have been from Gus, but now believe that it's not from a child. Now, this isn't to be confused with the other footprint that has been found. This was early in the search. They discovered a footprint about 500 metres from the property just north, and they did and still do believe that that was Gus's. But unfortunately, that didn't provide them with any new leads.
Middle of the Australian outback, where the air itself seems to shimmer, a 4-year-old boy takes a few steps into the red dust and is never seen again. No struggle, no sound, just silence. A single set of footprints leads away from his home, and then, halfway down a dirt trail, they stop. How can a child vanish within sight of his own house? Why was there only one footprint found and nothing else? And what explains the family's movements in those final, ordinary minutes before everything changed?
This is the story of the boy who vanished into the heat, and the search that would test an entire community's hope. In today's video, we will be discussing new details on the search and also what the family members were doing when he disappeared. Comment below where you're watching from, because stories like this deserve to be heard everywhere.
7 News has been able to establish a timeline starting at 5 p.m. on Saturday, September 27, when Gus was last seen playing in sand out the front of the homestead. We now know Gus's grandma was watching his little brother Ronnie inside, while his mum and another grandparent were 10 kilometres away looking after the station's sheep. Gus was discovered missing at 5:30 and the police were called 3 hours later. It's the end of the road for authorities here today. They've thrown everything at this latest search, but there's still no sign of 4-year-old Gus Lamont. As Army personnel departed, another wave of bitter disappointment set in.
We haven't got the outcome that we're looking for so far, and that's really disappointing. First and foremost, our thoughts are with Gus and his family. We would love to have resolution to this matter, but not any more than the family would themselves.
Over the last 4 days, 80 soldiers have scoured 95 square kilometres of the outback sheep station by foot. They've each been walking up to 25 kilometres a day, covering a 5.5 kilometre radius from his family's homestead. No one knows if the curly-haired boy wandered off to the north, south, east or west, and to a child his height it all would have looked the same. Tomorrow marks a sombre milestone, 3 weeks since anyone saw him. His grandma left him playing in sand out the front of their house, and within half an hour he was gone. It's unlikely he would have survived out here more than a few days.
When the family finally spoke, the picture of that afternoon became painfully clear. Gus's grandmother had been inside the house caring for the younger child. His mother and another grandparent were out tending to the sheep just a short distance away. Everyone was accounted for, except Gus. In their first public comments, the Lamont family described the moment their world changed. They said it began as an ordinary evening, the kind you never think will matter. And then suddenly, silence. No footsteps, no voice calling back, just the heavy quiet of the outback pressing in.
Let's be clear. 4-year-old boys don't just vanish into thin air, not without leaving a trail. Not without someone hearing a cry or spotting movement or noticing something that didn't belong. Nature doesn't erase a child without a trace. People do. Decisions do. Silence does. Somewhere in the red dirt of South Australia, little Gus Lamont was there. And then he wasn't. No footprints leading away. No belongings dropped behind. Nothing but questions that too many people seem comfortable leaving unanswered. But now, a new clue has surfaced. Another footprint. Smaller. Out of place. Ignored in reports, but impossible to overlook. And if that mark in the earth belongs to Gus, then he walked further than anyone thought. And if it doesn't, then someone else was out there with him. Either way, this is no longer just a missing persons case. This is a story begging to be told properly, without filters, without hush, without hesitation. Because until every hidden imprint in that soil is accounted for, none of us should be able to sleep easy. Before we dive in deeper, kindly subscribe to our channel if you believe in fighting for justice. We've just crossed 17,000 subscribers, all because of your support, and we need that same energy to reach 18,000 and then 20,000. So go ahead and drop your DNA on that subscribe button, because wherever you are, the day this vision is fulfilled, I will send my appreciation straight to you. Let's keep building this community that fights for peace and justice. It was an ordinary spring afternoon, the kind of day where no one expects tragedy, no alarms, no strangers on the horizon, no warning signs. The 27th of September 2025. A quiet rural property, Oak Park Station, a remote sheep station, sitting nearly 40 kilometers south of Yunta, surrounded by open plains and silence so wide it almost hums. Little Gus Lamont, just 4 years old, was playing on a mound of dirt near the homestead. Not in a forest, not by a river, not near a road, right next to home. Then came the moment that now haunts every timeline. Someone called him inside. Minutes passed. He didn't come. A casual check became a concerned look. A concerned look became panic. And suddenly that familiar backyard turned into a crime scene without evidence. 30 minutes. That's all it took. 30 minutes for a cheerful country afternoon to turn into a national mystery. In city investigations, 30 minutes is nothing. But in the outback, 30 minutes is everything. Because if a child truly walked away, he should have left tracks, clothing, sound, something. If he didn't, then someone else controlled that timeline. The question isn't when did he go missing? The real question is, what really happened inside those 30 minutes? From day one, authorities were careful with their wording. They said there was no evidence of abduction. And maybe that was true, but here's what they didn't emphasize. There was also no evidence of wandering. No hat caught on a branch. No toy dropped in the dirt. No shirt ripped by scrub. No blood. No tracks. No drag marks. No trail. Even the seasoned SES volunteers said it themselves. The ground tells stories, but this ground wasn't talking. People forget. The Australian outback is not a polished floor. It's not a smooth highway where someone can slip away unnoticed. It's red dust, sharp brush, loose gravel, thorny saltbush. It records movement. It remembers footsteps. And yet, the land holds no memory of Gus, not even a sock. A child that young cannot travel for miles through brutal terrain without leaving something behind, unless he never traveled that far at all. And that single possibility shifts everything. Because if Gus didn't walk away, then someone or something interrupted his path. And that means the question is no longer where did he go? It becomes who was near him when he disappeared. At the beginning of the search, hope came in the shape of a tiny imprint in the dirt, a partial footprint spotted by volunteers. It was logged, photographed, whispered about as a breakthrough, before being quietly discarded by officials as not related. Case closed on that clue, or so we were told. But now, chatter is growing again, not on mainstream headlines, not from official press releases, but from the people who were there, searchers, locals, anonymous tip-offs. They're saying another footprint has been found, smaller, fainter, possibly barefoot. That changes the question entirely. If that print belonged to Gus, then he walked. But if it didn't, then someone else was there. And whoever that someone is, they've never stepped forward. A footprint is more than dirt pressed into dust. It's evidence, it's direction, it's presence, and someone doesn't want that presence acknowledged. Because if authorities dismiss the first footprint so quickly, what would they do with the second one? Ignore it again, label it unconfirmed, or hide it because it doesn't fit the narrative anymore. Within hours of Gus's disappearance, Oak Park Station transformed from a quiet rural property into the heart of one of the largest search operations South Australia has ever seen. 470 square kilometers, mapped, combed, and swept. A 5.5 kilometers radius, walked by police, SES crews, volunteers, Indigenous trackers, even horseback teams. Drones scanned from above, heat sensors scanned from below. Every bush, every creek bed, every rabbit hole checked, twice, and yet, not a single conclusive trace. Not a shoe print, not a thread of clothing, not one item belonging to a 4-year-old boy who supposedly wandered into the wild. Even trained trackers said it themselves. There is zero evidence this child walked beyond that station's boundary. Let that sink in. No trail, no direction of travel, not even signs of struggle. Searchers were stunned. Seasoned professionals, people who could track a sheep across dry rock, said they would have expected something. But there was nothing. Almost as if Gus didn't walk away. Almost as if he was removed before anyone even noticed. At this point, logic demands one brutal exercise. Strip away emotion, lay out every possibility, and ask which one actually holds weight. Let's test them. 1. He wandered off. That's the official line. A curious child. A moment of distraction. A walk gone wrong. But where is the trail? 4-year-olds leave chaos behind. Scuffs in the dirt, broken twigs, dropped toys, yet Gus left nothing. 2. Wildlife attack. Yes, Australia has predators. Dingoes, snakes, wild pigs. But when animals strike, they leave evidence. Torn fabric, blood, disturbance, drag marks. Professionals searched for exactly that. They found none. 3. Accident. Fall into terrain. A hidden crevice. A sinkhole. A water dam, possible, except thermal imaging. Drones, ground teams, and air support scoured every inch. Even underground water tanks were drained. Still nothing. 4. Human involvement. This is the theory no one wants to say aloud. Not to accuse, not to point fingers. But when nature shows no evidence, only human hands remain untested. If the ground refuses to speak, then someone must. To understand what happened, we go back to the very last moment. Anyone claims to have seen Gus alive. His grandmother called him inside. A simple instruction, a routine moment, one every parent knows well. Come inside, Gus. But he didn't come. The family searched before calling police. That's natural. No one assumes disaster at first. But here's the question. No official timeline has clearly answered. How long did that search last before authorities were alerted? Was it 5 minutes, 15, 30, longer? Because in disappearance cases, every minute is a mile. Were there any vehicles on the road nearby? Oak Park Station may be remote, but not unreachable. Did anyone pass through? Any delivery trucks, contractors, tradesmen, traveling workers? Was anyone visiting the property that day? You don't need to accuse anyone to admit this. Every second before that phone call matters, because someone knows the real final moment before Gus disappeared. Not the official moment, not the assumed one, the real one. Somebody heard something, somebody saw something, even if they don't realize it yet, or don't want to say it. For days, the operation was officially labeled a search and rescue, but quietly, without headlines or fanfare, that wording changed. No longer rescue, now investigation. That shift matters. A dedicated unit, Taskforce Horizon, was formed. You don't assemble a task force unless evidence contradicts assumptions. The mission quietly changed from recovery to discovery. Translation: police no longer believed this was just a wandering child. They're following leads, plural, but none are being shared publicly. Not yet. Which tells us one thing. Something was found, something significant enough to close one door and open another. When a search turns into an investigation, that's not hope dying. That's truth hunting. They stopped looking for where he walked. Now they're trying to understand who was near him and why someone isn't talking. There's a hard truth we don't like admitting. Australia watched. The world watched. We posted hashtags. We shared headlines. We said how tragic. And then, we moved on. Not because we stopped caring, but because the noise faded. Because no new headline replaced the last one. Because silence makes it easy to forget. But silence does not mean closure. Somewhere, right now, a 4-year-old boy's story remains unfinished. His bed is still made. His toys are still waiting. His name still echoes through unanswered questions. And so we must say this out loud. He deserves more than silence. He deserves persistence, pressure, truth, not just sympathy, accountability. There's one detail that refuses to fade: the footprint. It doesn't matter if it belonged to Gus or not, because either outcome changes everything. If it was his, then he walked, which means he did leave that immediate area, which means someone should have tracked where he went. If it wasn't his, then someone else was out there, someone small, barefoot, moving near the property during the disappearance. Either way, that print represents movement. Somebody stepped away from that homestead and never returned. The question is, was it a frightened child or someone carrying him? And until that question is answered, this case isn't cold. It's unfinished. Let's confront another uncomfortable truth. If this happened in Sydney, if this happened in Adelaide, if little Gus disappeared from a city playground instead of a cattle station, would we still be waiting? Would there still be no confirmed theory? Would we accept silence as an answer? No, there would be press conferences every week, security footage released, witness sketches, door-to-door interviews, nationwide pressure. So why is a country child treated with country urgency? Why is distance allowed to dilute justice? Gus Lamont is not a statistic. He is not a fading headline. He is a 4-year-old Australian boy, and he deserves every resource, every voice, and every answer. This isn't about pointing fingers. It isn't about anger, or blame, or online outrage. It's about transparency. No hatred, no blame, no reckless theories. Just one request. Release every photo, every timestamp, every overlooked clue, every drone scan, every footprint image, every early witness note. Let experts, and yes, even the public, re-examine it all. Not to shame, not to dramatize, but to discover. Because one truth remains: someone out there knows something. And for Gus Lamont, silence is not an option. Not anymore. This video will end. But Gus's story can't. Not yet. If you've ever shared a post for a cause, if you've ever said someone should do something, then this is your moment to be that someone. No drama, no anger, just one simple mission. 1. Keep his name alive. 2. Share his story again. 3. Ask the question out loud. What really happened to Gus Lamont? Because missing children don't stay missing by chance. They stay missing when people stop asking. We won't let that happen here. Not to Gus. Not now. Not ever.